Well, welcome everyone. This is our first orientation into the Impactathon. So we've already done introductions, but just to summarize who we have our partners from MHub in Malawi, and then also my colleagues in the program development team. And today they're going to be taking you through a brief overview of the Impactathon curriculum. Oh, great. I see we have Chango. Hi, Chango.
Oh no. Okay. Citizen committee. What? Communicate cooperation. Again.
Hi, Chango. Ruth, are you able to hear me?
We are. It's Chongo, Debbie, Sabrina, Beria, and Sharon.
Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Thank you.
So perfect timing. We had just started to start. So I'll just take a moment and introduce everyone on the call. So you've already introduced yourselves, and that's our YWCA Zambia team. We're also joined by the MHub team in Malawi. We have Vincent, Blessings, Sangwani, and Rebecca there. And then my two colleagues, Christine and Roy, who are from our program development team. So they'll be providing the orientation today on the Moodle platform, as well as the high-level overview of the Impactathon curriculum. And this really forms the start of our orientation series. So as we progress through our partnership, we can also go into deeper detail, particularly around the face-to-face workshops that your team will be facilitating. So welcome, everyone. We're also recording this, so if anyone drops during the call, just join back, and then we'll share the link to the recording afterwards, so you can catch up on anything that you may have missed or wasn't clear. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Roy and Christine.
Thanks, Natasha. I'm happy to meet all of you and see you. It's really great to have this opportunity to connect. Roy and I are going to talk a little bit about the Impactathon, as well as the online platform that we'll be using for our learning. And then based on any questions you have or any further discussions you'd like to have, we can dive a little bit deeper into some of the specific curriculum and talk about next steps. I know that you were having some connectivity issues earlier. If you do run into challenges, I would say turning off your video might help. Sometimes that causes a bit of a lag. So if you're having a challenge with us, if we're cutting out a lot, you can turn off your video and it might help a little bit. So if it's, as much as it's lovely to see your faces, it might be a bit easier to hear us this way. If you have any questions or anything along the way, feel free to either speak up and ask any questions, or there's also a group chat on the right-hand side that you can type in. And if you have any questions, we'll make sure to answer them that way.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
No problem. I'm going to share a screen here. Hopefully you can all see the slide deck I've just presented. If it's moving back and forth between people's voices, you can always click on my picture or my little icon here in the bottom right, and that will make sure that it will lock the slide in. So if you're having challenges with that, you can do it that way as well. You may have already seen this deck. I think Natasha shared with you a curriculum overview video, and that was me talking through this earlier. So I won't go all the way into it, but I thought it would be good to start off with just some of the high-level overviews and objectives of the Impactathon, and then we can get into a little bit more detail from there. So I'll go through some of these slides. I can share the link to the slide deck quickly. Yeah.
We can see what you're.
You can't see the slide. Can anyone else see it? If you click on my picture in the bottom here.
Yeah, we can.
We can see it.
Okay.
Maybe.
Christine, I just made you the main screen, so you'll show kind of no matter who's talking.
Oh. Did that help?
Okay.
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Okay, how about I'll put a link also into the chat window. If you're having challenges seeing it through my shared screen, you can always open it up in Google Slides itself.
Okay.
So as I said, this might be familiar to you already. It has a lot of information about what our Impactathons are intended to be, what the outcomes are, and what the curriculum includes in the program. So hopefully it answers most of the questions that you're looking for, but really quickly just wanted to go over the general overview. As I'm sure you know by this point, of the Impactathons is about young people building awareness of social innovation and then designing and developing a lightweight prototype of a social impact idea. So they're spending time together over what we had recommended being about 7 weeks. I think this might be a bit more compressed in both of your cases. And then they pitch the idea, and often that is in conjunction with the opportunity to win either the chance to go to the Young Conference and take part in that event or some other type of support. So they look a little bit differently in each implementation, but overall it's really about guiding you through this process of awareness of social innovation and social enterprise, developing an idea, and then finally creating a lightweight prototype to test in their community.
Oh, now it's opened.
Oh, good. So overall, we're doing 3 main things with the Impactathons as objectives. We're trying to increase their understanding of social innovation and social enterprise as a livelihood option for them, that there's the opportunity to both make something that can support themselves, but also something that can have an impact in their community. The second objective is about developing that idea and then testing it with their communities so that they understand the importance of really getting input from the people who they are trying to help with their innovation. And then thirdly, we're looking as a DOT network at testing some ideas of scaling our program to new youth, to new countries that we haven't been before. How do we involve more and more young people in this type of approach? So those are the 3 main objectives of the Impactathons overall. And there's a bit of a difference in the goals of the Impactathon and the Young Conference. The Impactathon is really about the beginning of the journey for youth, so developing and testing that prototype, as I said, while the Young Conference is more about bringing together those social innovators who may be a slightly further along than those who had gone in the Impactathon. So perhaps they've done an Impactathon a few months earlier, or they had a business they've already started and are adding social impact to that. So there's a bit more broad range of social innovators that take part in the Young Conference, still at the early stage of the overall social innovation journey. And the goal of the Young Conference is about pulling them together to collaborate and learn, to share the innovations and the things that they've learned through this process, and then develop their networks. So really connect with youth from all across the world who are doing similar amazing work to gain inspiration and motivation to keep going along the journey. So the Impact Learning Plan is what I believe both of you will be using with your youth. And that is what we've developed as a set of curriculum that supports Impactathons. As you can see from this slide, it's at the beginning stage of the social innovation journey. So really in starting an ideation, as opposed to implementation and enterprise and scaling, which come a bit later. So it's intended for those who are fairly new to this space and are just learning the concepts of social innovation. So this is just a representation of the learning plan, beneath which there are a bunch of courses that we'll get into in a little bit. We have a recommended schedule of sort of Impactathon to Unconference. I know this will be a bit different in both of your cases as everybody's working on a slightly different schedule. But overall, there's a kickoff inspiration phase that has a 2 days face-to-face component. So 1 2-day workshop, and then perhaps a kickoff workshop or a kickoff day or some sort of event that other partners have been adding in. Then really the focus of the curriculum is about ideation. So that's about what we're recommending of 5 weeks of research and ideation. which has 5 face-to-face sessions, or those sessions can also be run through a peer-led approach. But I believe that Natasha has told me you're both doing face-to-face, so we'll focus on that option today. And then that is when they pitch at the end of ideation, once they've had a chance to develop their prototype and gain some input from their community. There's a pitching event. And then after that, they go into implementation of that prototype while getting ready for the Young Conference. So there's some time in between while they're meant to still be testing and iterating their prototype idea. I'm going to skip right to slide 11 here that has the course schedule. So this is that deeper dive into the Impact Learning Plan that lists out every course that's part of the curriculum. So each row in this table on the right is a different course that makes up the Impact Learning Plan. And then the information in those columns on the right-hand side are how many hours we are estimating that this course will take, and then what format it's delivered in. So the first column here with the computer at the top is online learning. So this program is delivered in a blended format. It's both online and facilitated or peer-led. So yeah.
I just want to take note that we lost one of the groups.
Oh no.
But I think carry on because we are recording. But.
Okay. Well, hopefully they'll jump back in for us. Yeah, so there's an online component. So that first column on the right here, so you can see your journey starts here, has 2 hours of online learning. The second column is face-to-face, so facilitated, which means that it's delivered by an expert facilitator. So that would be your role here. And then the third column with the 2 little people is about peer-led. So as you can see, the HCD courses are available in multiple formats. So they can either be facilitated or they can be peer-led. So this is 4 or 4. And then the little hammer here indicates that there's some field work they need to complete, which means that after the course, it's expected that the young people have some time to go out and complete the work that's required from that initial learning experience. And then the final column is about getting ready for submissions. So some of the courses have assignments or reflections or submissions that come in, and this is the amount of time that we recommend that we are estimating that they would take to complete that assignment or submission. So you can get a good estimate from this table about how much time you'd need to dedicate to the courses, but also how much time needs to exist in between each course for young people to be able to complete the required fieldwork or assignments as they go. So hopefully this will give you a good idea when you're planning your schedules of how to split this all up. The curriculum is all tied together in a story arc that takes them from starting this journey and the inspiration phase through to pitching their prototype. So I thought I would just talk through those connections briefly, and then I can answer any questions we have. And then maybe we can jump into what that looks like in Moodle, because sometimes it's nice to see what it actually looks like. Moodle is our online learning platform where young people will be interacting with this content. So I thought I could do a bit of an overview of how these are tied together and what the courses are, and then maybe we can dive into looking at it in the real format of how young people and how you as well will be interacting with the content. Any questions or comments before I do that? Oh, I see we have YWCA back. Welcome back.
Guys, any questions or comments?
I think it's clear. It's clear for now.
Okay.
Yeah, we're clear from this side so far.
Okay, great. Well, feel free to stop me and ask questions at any time, or as I said, put them in the chat window if anything's coming up.
Okay.
Great. So there are a couple of foundational online courses that foundational streams that run throughout the courses that are really important to the Impactathon. And you'll probably have noticed them in the titles or in some of the reading that you've done earlier. But we really focus on not only social innovation, but also gender awareness is a big theme for us this year at the Young Conference, but generally at DOT that we pull throughout our courses. Environmental awareness as well is something that we focus on in what we do. And then, of course, the digital and sort of technology piece is drawn all throughout. So the beginning of this impact learning plan starts with Your Journey Starts Here, which is just a course that allows them to be welcomed to the program and then introduce themselves to each other. So there isn't a lot of learning or coursework or anything that's associated with this first course. It's really just a welcome. Here's what to expect. We're so happy you're here. Get to know your learners and start learning about the system and the platform that you'll be using for this this experience. So it is just an orientation and welcome course. The next two courses are dive into some of those themes more deeply. So environmental awareness is an introductory course that's fully online about the potential for impact in their communities on the environment and how to be sustainable in your social innovation. So it's just a 1 hour online course with a 1 hour assignment that has them beginning to think about those concepts of environmental awareness. The next course, Gender in Your Local Landscape, is probably the first meatier course they run into. It's also all online, but does involve about 4 hours of field work. And this is a really important one to have happened before you bring them together for the first face-to-face, which is that next course, Compelling Vision for Change. In Gender in Your Local Landscape, they go through the process of thinking about their communities and how men and women interact or experience that community differently. And then there's some observation work that they do. So the field work in this course is about going out and observing a single gender environment and then reflecting on what you saw. So, for example, a woman in this course, a young woman, might go and visit a local salon where mainly women usually hang out, and do some observation of what that experience was like, and then do some reflection on it. So it's really a light touch observation course that has them begin the process of thinking through what it looks like from different perspectives in their community, what the community issues are, and the experiences are from different genders. That's an important course, as I said, to do before the Compelling Vision for Change, because they bring those reflections to this first face-to-face course. So Compelling Vision for Change is a 2-day workshop that's facilitated. And that is the first time that they've come all together, unless you've done a kickoff or an orientation day, which might be part of your plans. But it's the first facilitated curriculum element that we include. And during Compelling Vision for Change, they go through in the first day exploring their passions, the opportunities they have in their community. They share their reflections from Gender in Your Local Landscape. They explore what assets they already have. So what could they take advantage of? What are they passionate about? What's their vision for their community in the future? And then in day 2, they turn those visions and passions into their Compelling Vision for Change. And a Compelling Vision for Change is an overview of why, of where they want to have impact in their community, what they're really passionate about, and why they bring something really unique to this opportunity. So it's not about outlining a social innovation idea yet. It's really about just exploring what they're passionate about and want to have impact on. So that's the first big portfolio element that comes out of the curriculum so far, is their Compelling Vision for Change submission. So you can see that there's 4 hours of assignment time here. And that's really about refining and polishing up their Compelling Vision for Change before submitting it to the system for assessment. A big part of being a facilitator in this learning plan is about assessing the submissions that come in and providing feedback to the young people who have gone through, who have submitted these assignments to you. We have some tools that will help you do that, and Roy can talk a little bit more about them when we dive into Moodle, but I just wanted to raise that that's a big role for a facilitator and important to think about in terms of timing when you're developing your schedules, that you have enough time to take a look at the submissions that come in and to give them some feedback on how they can improve and where to go. So the first of those is this compelling vision for change. After that, they go into Intro to Social Enterprise, and that is another online course. It's about 4 hours of work. And that is really about defining some key concepts of social enterprise. What does it mean to be a social entrepreneur? And providing some examples of what that looks like across the network. So what does social enterprise look like? We have some examples from different countries where we've worked and outline sort of the impact that they're having, as well as the income that they're generating. So to give them an idea of what that might look like. It also helps them start defining their social impact idea. So how could they turn their compelling vision for change into something more specific about where they want to go with their social innovation that they'll be developing during this time. The next course is Intro to Personal Branding, and this is really about telling that story of their commitment and the impact that they're having. So it takes them through developing a personal brand map. So thinking through some of these really important concepts when we're talking about what it is that we're passionate about and what we're doing. So audience, the impact that you're having, who it is that you're working with, and how you're imagining to be successful in your social impact idea. So that's about a 2-hour online course with some time spent for them developing their personal brand map before bringing them to the social impact idea submission, where they submit that finalized version of their social impact idea for you for feedback and assessment once again. And again, there are templates and tools for how to grade and how youth can complete these things, all within the Moodle online learning platform. The next 5 courses are really the bulk of the work for youth. It's the human-centered design courses, and there's a series of 5 of them. They're all 4 hours long, approximately. And as I said, can either be facilitated or peers, so youth can lead themselves in small groups. But I think you're focusing on facilitation, which will make it a little bit simpler because you can control schedules and make sure everyone's moving along. And then after each HCD session, there's about 4 hours of field work they need to do to prepare for the next HCD course. So it's really important to make sure they have some time in between each of these courses to be able to complete that work. So during the first human-centered design course, they look at design thinking and planning user research, which means introducing those elements of ideation and prototyping, and then thinking through, now I have my social impact idea, how can I go out into my communities and find out more about whether and how this would be successful. So planning, who do I want to talk to? Who are my main audience members? Using the work that they've done in their personal branding course to think about talking through their idea with community members. So they plan their user research during this session, and then they go out and conduct that user research in their communities in between. So that when they come to the second HCD course, gather user research and identify gaps, they're able to come with their user research and work together to identify, what did I learn doing this research with my community? And then where is there an opportunity for me to create something that would have impact? Once they leave that HCD2 course with plans to do a bit of a landscape analysis. So who else is working in the space that I'm interested in? Now that I found a gap I want to try and fill, who else is doing some work that I can learn from, or that is already happening in my community that I may not be aware of. They come back after having done that work into the third HCD session where they brainstorm solutions. This is about thinking through thinking through an idea that they may want to develop that solves the problem that they've identified in their community. They leave this HCD course and go do some field work that's about developing some ideas around prototypes. So there's some reading to do, and then they mainly need to do some thinking about what might I want to test in a really lightweight prototype way to find out more about this social innovation idea that I'm developing. During the 4th HCD session, they create the plan for how to roll out that prototype. So what kind of resources or people do I need to develop this prototype and to test it in my community? And then they go out and do some initial testing. They come back for HCD5 and they work on turning what they've learned so far during this process into an impact business canvas. So this is a double-sided business model canvas that you may be familiar with from other organizations or other curriculum. But in this case, it includes the impact that they're having. So it's not only how do I plan on making money, it's also how do I plan on having impact in my community. So this final HCD session has them working on filling out some parts of that canvas. And that canvas is a really important portfolio element as well for the Impactathon journey. It's not intended to be fully complete and will be something that they continue to work on throughout their journey, even after the Impactathon ends. It's meant to be a really important and live, living tool for them. But it's really about defining some key concepts of their social impact idea. The gender analysis and social innovation, they have started this thinking during HCD1. So there's an initial introduction to these concepts during the first human-centered design course. But then now that they've gone through the rest of their HCD courses, this gender analysis and social innovation course allows them to say, you know, now that I have this idea and I've developed out what I think my plan would be, how does both the problem I'm trying to solve as well as the solution I'm creating impact men and women differently? So thinking through different segments of the population and how they might interact with these things differently. And then to maybe do some refining of that idea to show that they've considered and worked on their idea to make sure that it works for both men and women in their community. The last course is this Measure Your Impact course, which is a 2-hour online course. And that's about thinking through, now that I have this plan for impact, how can I measure what it is that I'm doing and know that I'm making a difference in my community? So it's a light touch measurement course that thinks about outputs from their social innovation and then how they might learn about whether that's working. So whether it's doing interviews or surveys or feedback forms. So has them start thinking about a plan for making sure that the impact they're having or that they think they're having is actually happening in their community. Also after HCD5 and while they're working on gender analysis and Measure Your Impact, they're developing a pitch deck and a pitch script for this MVP prototype fair is what we call it. And this is when they come back together after some time testing their prototype to pitch to you or to experts in your community, to their peers as well, what their idea is. We know that the pitch is a really important tool for social innovators. So being able to tell your story in a less than 5 minutes with some visuals is something that will really help them to continue in this process. And it also gives you an opportunity to see the outcomes of what it is that they're doing. And in general, this is how the young people have been selected for the Young Conference, is based on their pitch. So that is not necessarily a course, but it's a set of tools that will help them to create a slide deck and a pitch script and prepare for this event. And then there's also some tools to help you set up what this might look like in your context. It's usually about a 1-day event, depending on how many youth you have pitching and what other things you plan to do. And there's some field work, so about 6 hours or so of them preparing to develop this pitch. And then that really wraps up the specific curriculum in the learning plan. Afterwards, we hope that they continue to interact with the YLP, and we can talk about what that might look like in your context, or continue to interact with your organizations. And then it moves more towards preparing for the Young Conference, interacting with some of the digital engagement pieces that we have built in. So the Facebook groups and later on our other platforms, so that they continue to build those networks and collaborate once the learning is complete of the learning plan. I will pause there. I see we've lost YWCA again. That's too bad. Any questions or comments before we take a look at the online platform? I know that was a lot of information, so I'm happy to loop back around to it after you've had some time.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the HCDs, I wanted to find out if there's already materials for the participants such that will guide through the workshops.
There
For
is.
example, if we take number 2, gather user information and identifying gaps, are there questions that will be probing the participants, or do we, as the facilitators, come up with the questions?
Sure. Yeah. For each course, and specifically for the facilitated courses like the HCD course, we've created an entire workshop guide that guides you through what to ask of the participants and make sure that they've completed activities that help them explore this. So there is curriculum that helps you do that for each of these courses, and we can show you that in Moodle. That's where it all lives.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
No, I think it's clear. We're following.
Great.
Yeah.
Roy or Natasha, anything I missed that you would add to this?
I would probably just say that was an excellent overview, Christine, of the overall story arc. You know, thinking about the journey that one of these young social innovators will embark on, and some of the important artifacts that they will create as they move through the program. We wouldn't expect you to be able to deliver any of these courses on the basis of just that overview. In particular, some of the face-to-face courses, like the Compelling Vision for Change course, the HCD courses, you may benefit from a more detailed train the trainer or detailed overview of each of those courses, and we'd be happy to provide those. And as Natasha said, we just see this initial discussion as an opportunity for you to get an overall sense of the program. And then as you prepare for delivery of those courses, we can help provide you with more guidance.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. Yeah, Kristen did a very good job in explaining the overview, and you've also shared like another way of doing it. So we're very okay, I think, with what we've learned so far. I think we just look forward to Moodle now and then more from there as well.
Okay, Christine, was there anything you wanted to wrap with there before?
I don't think so. I think the rest of the deck that you may already have seen, there's some questions to think about as you're developing your courses or your schedule. So I think a lot of these have already been decided, but you could always go back and take a look at them. Some important milestones were listed there. I know there's probably some changes that have happened since then, but that we were hoping to know who was coming to the unconference by August 1st. I'm not sure if that's still on track for these partnerships. And then there's also a unconference preparation process that happens afterwards that has them developing presentations and pitching session presentations for the unconference, which is a really great opportunity for youth that we can support them in afterwards. So I think other than that, most of this is probably pretty clear to you. And as you said, always can come back around with more questions. So maybe it's worth jumping into Moodle.
Okay.
Do you want me to stop sharing, Roy? And
Sure.
Okay. And Natasha, you may have to switch the lead presenter.
Okay, cool. Roy, just let me know when you're ready to present and we can do that.
Okay, I'm struggling to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to start with just a brief slide deck, and this slide deck that I'll share with you here is one that we can also share the link to so that you can have access to it as reference. again, the idea here is just to give you an orientation, an overview. I wouldn't expect you to come away from this 15, 20-minute discussion and feel confident that you are able to support users, online in the system. We can continue with, in subsequent discussions, drilling down into the details and information that you need. We just ask that you kind of take in sort of this overview for now. So the program is hosted on an open source platform called Moodle. I don't know if you guys have familiarity or have had opportunity to use Moodle based online learning systems in your other learning experiences. It's the largest open source community out there, and has a very large install base in both the secondary and post-secondary world globally. So we're happy to be part of that open source community, and all of the content that Christine described is hosted in our Moodle system. I'll just pause there and switch tabs and quickly go to that environment. So it's hosted at learn.dotrust.org. And this is where you as facilitators and your participants will go to access the content. Of course, for online learning, they will access and consume all of the content there. For face-to-face workshops, workshop guides, assignments, discussion forums would all be hosted and supported online. But of course, the workshops themselves will be face-to-face events that you will be supporting. And the material that you would use to support those face-to-face events is, however, hosted here in Moodle. So Moodle is the online learning system that we're using. And one of the things that Christine took you through was a learning plan. So the learning plan that your participants will be completing is the Impact Learning Plan. And Christine had talked about how it is actually a hybrid of two of our existing learning plans, titled Explore and Prototype. The purpose of the Impactathon collapsed these two learning plans into a single learning plan called Impact. And that Impact Learning Plan spans the 15-ish courses that Christine just took us through. So in your case, your users will only be enrolled in a single learning plan, the Impact Learning Plan. When they are logged in, that learning plan will be laid out for them, and they'll be able to see the courses and the recommended course sequences. As they successfully start a course, the course status will show in progress. As they successfully complete all of the activities associated with the course will then be marked as complete. And they see this overall progress in their learning plan as they complete all of the courses. The DOT Youth Leadership Program, and as well, of course, the Impactathon program, is built around a competency-based learning approach. And there are 16 competencies that DOT focuses on in our courses. And when you reflect back on the story arc that Christine told in terms of the Impact Learning Plan and the courses that youth are taken through, and you reflect back on some of the experiences and assignments, you'll see a lot of that reflected here in the 16 competencies that are covered. There's an environmental sustainability course. There's lots of focus on gender equality. There's, of course, building of digital skills that happens throughout as they use different digital tools, Google Docs, Google itself for researching, or web browser for researching. Then there are all of the sort of personal empowerment skills and 21st century skills that underlay a lot of the experience that the Impactathon participants will go through. Collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity. And then, of course, the social innovation skills that they're introduced to through the HCD courses, the business startup concepts that they're introduced to through the business model canvas approach. As you go through courses, you'll see that an individual course may not focus exclusively on a competency, but might span multiple competencies. And one of the things that you'll see in the dashboard in Moodle is that the participant is shown how they're building these competencies as they complete courses in this skills profile display that you'll see, and I'll show you in the interface. Each of the courses is made up of a number of different activities, and so I'll demo this as well. But I just alluded to the fact that a course might consist of some online learning where they will read content or perhaps watch videos. Those online activities will be supported by discussion forums that they might participate in, assessments, quizzes that they might complete. The online learning is built in such a way that it's responsive, so that if they wanted to consume that content on a mobile device, they could do that as well. The online content is designed to be fairly interactive. We try to engage the learner with activities where they have to, submit response to knowledge checks, or to do little drag and drops, or to expand content, just so that they're not scrolling endlessly in content. The assessments, if there is an assessment in a particular course, will be a multiple choice quiz. The quizzes are graded. We allow up to 3 attempts. If someone fails all 3 attempts, we can still, and you as facilitator will be able to go in and clear their attempts and give them another chance at them. And as well, you can go in and manually change their score. So we do that mostly because we obviously want the quizzes to be a reflection of what knowledge is being built by the participant. But we recognize as well that sometimes there are language barriers. People may be failing attempts, not because they don't understand the concepts, but because the language is difficult. And we defer to your judgment in terms of your understanding of what the skills are of that individual. And that's true as well of the submissions. And Christine made mention of the fact that there are tools that we've provided with each of the assignments and submissions that will guide you through the process of scoring or assessing the submission. We provided rubrics, and I'll demo those or show you those. But again, the rubrics are an opportunity for you to obviously objectively evaluate the submission that the participant provides. But there may be times where, again, language could be a barrier, or you have some deeper insight into the capacity of the student where you might want to afford them more room or latitude in terms of how you're scoring them. I presume, will we be using the peer assessment strategy, Christine, do you know?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So yeah, all of the assessments will be, or the submissions, pardon me, will be ones that you as facilitators will be evaluating. And so that, as Christine said, will be one of the biggest tasks that you'll take on as a facilitator. I understand that one of the groups is supporting 20 participants, the other group supporting 50. So you can imagine that when there are 50 compelling vision for change submissions, that there's some time and work associated with reviewing those 50 submissions and then providing each of the participants with a score. I guess we never got YWCA back, eh?
No, they haven't been able to rejoin, but we are recording, so I suspect they'll catch up, and then we can touch base with them if they have further questions.
Okay. So fair enough, assessments, and I think with that, I'm going to take a little bit of a pause from the slide deck and jump over to Moodle itself. So here is the main login page hosted at learn.dotrust.org. And of course, in order to log in, you need a user ID and password. And I'm just going to drop in as myself for now. I'm an administrator in the system, so we're going to see more than you would probably, or not probably, you're going to see a lot more than your participants will see, but it'll allow me to tour around a little bit more. So I log in, and I will be presented, as we saw earlier, with my learning plans. Now, because I'm an administrator, I'm seeing all of the learning plans. Your students will only see this impact learning plan. And so they will click on that learning plan and be dropped in and see the courses that consist of the learning plan that Christine provided you with an overview of. I'll just go back up for a second and go back to the home screen to orient you again. So on the home screen, they will see this one learning plan, the impact learning plan. Below that, they see that skills profile that we talked about. And you can see I have not been very diligent about completing courses, so my skills profile is looking a bit sparse. And below that, there's a way for them to quickly access other courses in the curriculum, and that's basically the home screen. On the left-hand side, the menu will be a little bit shorter for them, and so I'm going to log out. And I mentioned this as well because your screen will look a little bit different as a facilitator than the participant screen. As a facilitator, you will have access to more options in the menus, and within the courses, you will see more. So if I log out and log in as a student, you'll see right away that the view that I get will be different. On the left-hand side, the menu order. In this particular case, this student is logged into a lot of learning plans, but let me log out and just log in as a student that doesn't have access to a lot of learning plans. So here you can see very different view. This student is only seeing 3 learning plans and their skills profile, and of course the menu is much shorter than the menu that I saw. Any questions so far?
No, we're good, Roy. We're following.
Okay. So I'm going to log back in as me, and let's drill into a course and take a look at some of the things that I was orienting you to. By the way, noticing time, you know, what realize we're supposed to be done in 2 minutes.
Are you able to continue, Roy, or do you have a hard stop?
Christina and I have a weekly, but I mean, we could probably change that, Christine. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'll check in with them.
Okay.
What I was thinking, I'll just say we'll be a few minutes late, or they'll be okay without us for a bit. I was going to say, though, what might be useful is continuing to dive into a course, but then getting them set up with the form.
Yeah.
And then we could maybe loop back around after you've had a chance to get into it.
The cohort enrollment form?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. So I think we probably need at least 15 more minutes to do some of that, Natasha, if not 30.
Okay. Vincent, from your end, does your team have a hard stop now, or would you be able to continue for another 15 to 30 minutes?
I think it's okay. We'll be able to continue 15 to 30 minutes. We're fine here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, apologies for the interruption there in the flow, but I think it was probably important to make sure that we were all able to stay. So I've logged back in as myself, and as I said, I have access to the Impact Learning Plan that you and your participants will have access to. I'll drop into it. And so here is the first course. Your journey starts here. In the table that Christine had shared with you, you may recall this is an online course, and I'll drop into it. So as she mentioned, this is intended to be an orientation to the program. It provides an overview. You'll notice here that I am seeing sort of duplicate information, and this is not going to be true of your participants, that your participants, through the enrollment code that they get, will be put in specific groups, and based on those groups will be assigned specific information. So in some cases, we have groups where this welcome letter has been more customized. In your case, your participants will get this more generic welcome letter. So again, I mention it just to orient you to the fact that as a facilitator, or I as the administrator of the system, sometimes you get a view that is different from what the participant sees. And I'll show you some other examples of that. So the student will see this welcome letter welcoming them to the program. They will be able to access this online learning module, and this will be their initial orientation to the program. This is the content that I was saying that is responsive. And so if they were to be doing this on a mobile device, then this content will scale to the size of screen that they have. And I can try and show you that. So for example, you'll notice that the content will sort of scale based on my screen orientation, which is useful because a lot of participants will often want to access online content using a mobile device. So they would continue to scroll through this material and access this material. Once they've completed that activity, they would go on and they will attend potentially a workshop if you decide you want to run an orientation workshop. So here's an example of where the workshop includes for the participant a guide. So you can see that this particular activity is grayed out, and that any item that is that sort of grayed out format is an activity that the student would not see. So this is only visible to to facilitators. So you as the facilitator would have access to this workshop slide deck that you would use to present the workshop. Any questions there? I won't go into all of the activities, but essentially you can see that a course, this Your Journey Starts Here course, consists of different types of learning activities: online content, a workshop that they have to attend, discussion forums that they participate in, and that would be the course. As they successfully complete activities, check marks will appear beside the activities, and once they've successfully completed all of the activities, when they return to their learning plan at the top level, it will show the course as completed because they've successfully completed all of the activities. I'll stop there. I think someone was coming off mute, so. Was there a question?
No, I think we're good for now.
Okay. All right, so I dropped into the Your Journey Starts Here course. Not every course will have the same format. I'll do some random selection here. I'm dropping into the gender in your local landscape course. So once again, there's some online learning. There's a submission. So in this case, as Christine mentioned, in this course during the online learning, they're provided with some tools in terms of information and concepts that will guide an observation that they'll do by going out into their community. And if they were a woman, as Christine said, they might go and visit a salon, which is predominantly an environment that would be frequented by women. And she'll sort of observe these single gender interactions, you know, taking note of the types of conversations that are had, way people interact, and then come back, and then they would provide their observation as a submission. So these submissions then are just sort of reflections that are uploaded into the system. And you as a participant, as a facilitator, will be able to access those submissions for your cohort of learners. And so I've introduced something new now, which is the concept of a cohort. And so the cohort is a group of participants that are moving through the program together. And so your cohort will consist of either the 20 or 50 participants that you've invited to the program. And I will just pause there and make a comment, which is that, of course, your goal is to successfully support either 20 or 50 youth through the program. Given the rigor and the workload of the program, you might consider inviting more than the 50 or 20. You might consider inviting, 60 or 30 participants into the Impact Learning Plan, with the expectation that there will be a certain percentage of attrition along the journey. And that would be fine. We are going to share with you a registration code, and you will share that registration code with your participants, whoever you decide to invite into the program. I'll stop there. All right, if there are no questions, I wanted to just quickly take a look at a submission rubric. And so the compelling vision for change is one of the first sort of important submissions that are made. This is an opportunity for the participant to really bring together their passion, the problem that they're trying to solve, and the future state that they hope to realize, right? So I'm a young person. I happen to have a sibling who is visually impaired. And because of that relationship, I have a passion for the challenges of visually impaired people in my community. I've had firsthand experience sort of empathizing with those challenges. And my future vision is that visually impaired people have much better access to the workforce by providing them with the resources, by shifting public attitude towards visual impairment. And so that's my future vision. And so it's an opportunity for a young person to really, compress that passion and that problem and their future state that they hope to see into this compelling vision vision statement. And so they submit those, and then it becomes the responsibility of the facilitator to evaluate those statements and really provide meaningful feedback to the participant around how they might refine or inject more purpose into that vision statement. And so we tried to provide you with some guidance around how you can objectively evaluate each submission. And so all of the submissions will have these rubrics that you see here. There will be different criteria. So each row is sort of a criteria that you're evaluating the vision statement on. So you're evaluating it for creativity. You're evaluating it for its communication. How well is the idea articulated? How are they demonstrating social responsibility? And so each of these criteria, we provide you with sort of 3 levels. You know, there's no creativity in here. There's some creativity. This is a very creative idea. And so as you grade these, so that is just a rubric example. I'll actually go into a student. Here I am looking at a particular student's record, and I have pulled up their submission. I will have pulled it up and we'll be looking at it. And I am going through and providing them with a score. And in this particular case, I felt that they weren't properly articulating and identifying the problem. And so I really want them to revisit this and beef it up. And so here I would provide them with a little bit of feedback. You know, I'd recommend that in all of the cases where you're providing them less than sort of the 2 points, that you provide them with a little bit of feedback and guidance around how they might improve their submission. And then finally, you can provide sort of overall submission feedback. I won't save those changes because this is an actual student. So that is a very quick overview of sort of the online system and you know, how students, the view that students will get, how they'll navigate from course to course, a little bit insight into your role as facilitator, a quick look at the different types of content that they see, and some of your role as facilitator in terms of how you support their progress through the program. I'll take a pause again. Any comments or feedback?
I think we're good. I was just going to ask about the rubric, but since you went over it, all questions have been cleared on my side. So,
okay.
Anyone else?
I'll reiterate something I said earlier, which is I wouldn't expect you, based on that quick overview, to not have more questions about rubrics. And so I mentioned that, for example, the Compelling Vision for Change 2-day workshop is a workshop that I think would warrant perhaps a more detailed train the trainer on that workshop. Here is the facilitator guide for that workshop. And we can put aside another hour to just focus in on the Compelling Vision for Change workshop and provide you with guidance on how to facilitate this workshop. When we do the Train the Trainer for the Compelling Vision for Change workshop, we could then really drill into the rubric and provide more guidance around that rubric. And we can do that for any of the other courses. Follow-up question there?
No, we're good. We're good, Roy.
All right, I'm just going to go back then to my slide deck. And Christine had encouraged me to talk a little bit about enrollment in more detail and some of the mechanism of enrollment. Actually, just before I do that, let me just show you the login screen. So I'm going to log out. And I've said several times now, well, all of the content is hosted here at learn.dotrust.org. And essentially, this is where you're going to direct your participants. You're going to provide them with this link, and they are going to arrive at this login screen, and they're not going to have a login ID. What they're going to do is go down and click Create New Account. And so they'll be provided with instructions to do that. They click Create New Account, and they fill in this registration form. The piece of information that they won't know is the enrollment key. And the enrollment key is something that you will provide them in your instructions to them to enroll. And that enrollment key will ensure that your cohort is placed into the same group and that you as facilitators are placed into that group. And so we need to set up that enrollment key for you as facilitators and for your participants. And so I'll take you through that process of how do we get that enrollment key set up for you and your participants, and provide you a little bit more guidance on the enrollment registration process. All of the fields, and I recognize there are quite a few fields that have asterisks, if not all of them, are required fields. And we do that mostly for our M&E team who want to capture a lot of this demographic data. So we need them to indicate, their gender and provide contact information, this level of education, their region. All of this information supports some of our data analysis, because we're able to look at progress reports by region or progress reports by gender or by age. And so we require all of those fields. All of the participants will, of course, be required to have an email address, and we do recommend a Google address, but it's not a requirement. So going back to this, I think I've covered some of this, but essentially every cohort, will be required to have a registration key, an enrollment key, and the facilitator as well. I think I talked about this. I didn't get into the grade book and things like that. These are sort of more the facilitator sort of responsibilities. I think we can get into sort of grading and stuff like that when we get into a more detailed train the trainer. But talking about enrollment then. So here is an example of sort of a message, or see, here's some questions that we would typically ask, but your learning plan is fixed. Here is an example of an email message that you would send out to the participants that you're inviting into the Impactathon. So basically, you're going to instruct them to go to learn.dotrust.org. You're going to provide them with some basic instructions on how to complete the registration form, and you're going to provide them with that enrollment key. Now, you could do that in an orientation workshop. You don't have to do this via an email. You could run an open session where you invite a group of youth who you might advertise the session saying, we have an opportunity, come to this session, and then just stick this all up on the whiteboard and then have them enroll with you right there during that workshop. And a lot of our partners do it that way. So you'll want to explain the enrollment key, and off they go. There is a user agreement, an end user license agreement, which they have to acknowledge. And away they go. This is a snapshot of the end user license agreement, just essentially asking them to abide by some basic rules, code of conduct, and asking them to agree to not break any laws. I think I'll leave it at that. This is more detailed than you probably. So there is a form that needs to be filled out, which is the cohort enrollment form. And Natasha will fill this out on your behalf. And Natasha, perhaps you can just update me on whether that's been done yet or not.
Thanks, Roy. I did it last week. Does that go to Rob directly, or?
It does go to Rob.
I know he's off this week, so perhaps we'll hear back from him.
Yeah, he is. If there's urgency around getting that set up, let me know. Rob does pop online in the evening sometimes, and I can grab him and get him to take care of something if I need him to do something?
I think next week should be okay. I know for YWC they won't be doing the enrollment until the end of the week, and I think Vincent, it's the same for your team. If we were to get you the enrollment key sort of early next week, would that be all right, or would you need it sooner?
Yes, I think that would be okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay. How am I doing on time? 10:20. I think, Natasha, that may be a good place to stop for today. And I reiterate once again, I certainly wouldn't expect you to feel, fully confident to support the Impact Learning Plan and the online system just on the basis of this 80, 90 minutes. And we're happy to reconvene at a future date and drill down on the courses and the system.
Great, thank you, Roy. And I'm in discussions with both teams about sort of next steps in terms of orientation. So we'll also reach out to you in the coming days once we've sort of had to think through that a bit more. But I guess I'll just pause first and see, Vincent, did your team have any questions or comments that you wanted to talk through before we wrap up?
Do we have questions, guys?
No, we don't. We're good.
Great. Well,
Natasha, we're okay. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your patience. And Roy and Christine, thank you for this incredibly thorough and clear orientation. As Roy and Christine mentioned, this is just the first point in the orientation journey, and we spoke yesterday about some of those next steps. So, as you have a chance to delve through this in more detail, please don't hesitate to, contact me if you have any questions, and then we can loop in Roy and Christine as we move forward with the orientation plan. So the lines of communication are open, and please do feel free to come to us with any questions you might have as you go through this.
Okay. So thanks, Natasha, and thanks, Roy and Christine, for the detailed presentations. We look forward to more engagements with you, and we look forward to delivering the actual workshops and the trainings. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and wonderful to meet you, and welcome to the DOT family. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was really great.
All right, thanks everyone. And I'll send the link to the video via email. So if anything wasn't clear or you want to share it with others or go back to review things, you'll be able to do that. Thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.